There's obviously a lot to think about when walking away from this film. And what's really great about an experience like this is whether you love it or you hate it, there's just something so incredibly haunting about it that I can imagine some people walking away from it and it's still going to be kicking in their brain for some time. And so I'm curious like what some of those conversations were like on set as you were filming this and how like some of those intense days where there's like a really intense moment, how you directed days like that in comparison to days where it might be a little bit lighter.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the truth is that a lot of that is in the preparement of a film. I mean, writing the script, finding out how you think you want to shoot it. That took a long time. It took a long time to, believe in that you could actually make a script that is a more like a clash of different things. We wanted to do a horror film, but I'm not very good at many horror conventions, so it would never be like a clean version of a horror film with a lot of jump scares or
Yeah,
supernatural elements. It was more like an relatable, intimate kind of horror that took place between people. And people who read the script, the actors was very disturbed by it. I
sure.
also had actors who didn't want to come to the auditions or wanted
Mm,
me to change the ending. And even though the four actors that are in the movie really wanted to do it, they had also, some questions and troubles, and thought it was a, very disturbing experience to read that. But I think, when we prepare a movie so much, and especially when you do a very dark tale, you have to create a light set. You have to have some, it had to feel very joyful and amusing. So I think we were very, very focused, and we knew very much what we wanted to do in the scenes. And because you work with the scenes before shooting them for a long time, you also feel more free to
mhm.
change things and to take, notes and gifts from the actors. So I thought it was a very, very focused, very fun and light film to do. We had one big nightmarish circumstance, and that was Corona, because we were shooting when that, hits.
Right.
So 7 weeks were actually 12 months of shooting with 5 breaks. So there was this feeling of not knowing if we could actually do it. And when we waited 6 months, it was summer, and it looked like winter, and the kids were growing, and the house
Mm,
was gonna torn down, and there was a lot of extremely challenging circumstances, and that made everyone focused. It made everyone wanted to do this and succeed with this. So we had a lot of, concentration and good atmosphere, because everybody, of course, knew that I would be devastated if this film I worked with for years
yeah.
could not be made. So it was like, I choose to call it like an apocalypse now experience,
Mm,
with a lot of bad luck and a lot of trust, but also a lot of frustration, not knowing if you could actually do the film. So it took a long time, but it was yeah, it was a fun film to do when you think of the material.
right.
Actors like doing, evil stuff.
Yeah, I can only imagine. But since you said like there was a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion amongst the talent and probably your collaborators. I mean, I have to really hand it to you that you stuck to your guns and you saw this vision for all the way through. And if there was some push against that ending, I mean, I've seen films that have gone one direction, but you go in another, and I just really have to commend you on that. And so, what was
Thank
that like to get some of that challenge, but then just really think that no, I want to make this a wholly unique experience that sets itself apart from something else that other people may be anticipating with this experience like
Sure.
this.
When you succeed, and people tell you they like that, it feels very satisfying because of course you're shaking a little bit along that journey. Because, when if I go back to to the first writing day with my brother, with whom I wrote this, we actually really shaked hand that we wanted to do the most disturbing film in Danish film history, and that it was an exercise doing that, coming out of our comfort zones and coming out of Danish cinema's comfort zones. We have a lot of great films, but we also have a lot of, pleasing films that want to take care of you in the end. Films I like, and most films does that, but I kind of miss films that disturbs you, that is a physical experience, that doesn't please you and makes you reflect and think about life and humans and modern society. And if this premise had to be, truthful, we had to go all the way. So I also decided that it's okay if it doesn't please everybody. It's okay if it doesn't go worldwide. It's an artistic film, and I wanted not to be, I'm also safe when I do films, and I'm also nervous, and I wanted to say this time, like a Greek drama or an opera or like mythical stuff, let's go all the way. And let's make it larger than life, because many Danish films are very realistic and, dealing with small issues like everyday life trouble and all that. And we wanted to do an adventure, which I think is more normal in American cinema. But in Denmark, it's mostly kitchen sink realism. So for us, it was, ending a film with a stoning is extremely radical in Denmark. And I like film that stands out. It was also like thinking of why did I come to this, wanted to make films, and I admire Lars von Trier and Michael Haneke and all these kind of auteurs that has this courage to take a story all the way. So it was also, I was a little bit conscious on that, trying to make an artistic film where I could use the genre to make it disturbing. But I had a lot of challenge. People wanted me to change endings and said no, and I rewrote it 4 times with a happy ending that I never shot because it was so bad. but that was also part of finding what works, and it didn't work that they survived. So it was also to be truthful to the material. So I'm pleased that we stuck to that. It was not always easy. No, it wasn't.
I'm very glad that you did something different, because I don't think I'm going to see anything else like this for some time, and so I think that really says something. So since you mentioned like filmmakers like Lars von Trier, and I imagine they help develop your taste palette a little bit, but since you wrote this with your brother, is your family like, oh, we know what kind of work they're going to produce, because they've been into this kind of stuff for the longest time? So I'm curious, like, where your taste palette really developed and how your family may respond to something like this.
Yeah, I made 3 features, and I made some short films before that, but my features are very different, but they all deal with something that is very uncomfortable and awkward, and they are more satirical. I like to look at human behavior and also showing a little bit tabooish stuff. My last film, A Horrible Woman, about a relationship where the woman is very horrible to the man, was like extremely controversial in Denmark, because you said something not flattering about women, but it was extremely recognizable, especially for men. So I think my family and also the audience in Denmark, they expected something that was a little controversial, because my last film was it. But my I had a lot of discussions with my girlfriend, who works as a psychotherapist. So she was very helpful in developing the characters, having great conversations about what is it about. And I think my brother's girlfriend was a little bit more. I remember he said to him, "What is going on in your mind?" like I didn't know you had that side of you. But the true thing is that you can be a nice human being, but in your arts you deal with things that are not nice. It's a ventil or something where you can let out your thoughts or your fears and your desires, and we are not going around being like crazy people. We're living, me and my brother, we live very, very civilized, normal life with children and all that. But that was also what scared me. Like, when we live so safe and civilized, what would we do if we meet some evil forces? Can we at all deal with that? Are we actually permitting evilness ourselves because we have never met it before, so we can't even believe it? These were like my fears. Would I just paralyze if I met a bad human being that would do something to my children? So I had to answer this question in a very honest way, and not like in a very romantic way. We often see, especially in American cinema, how the main character can suddenly do anything and shoot and fight and save his family. And it should be a realistic take on that, because most people in real life cannot even fight back. So I had to be very truthful to who I am and the life I live, which are very safe and privileged. But I'm extremely afraid of something bad would happen, and extremely afraid of my own lack of reaction to that. And that provoked a lot of people, that they don't do more. But that was, that was the premise of mine. That was the provocative premise, that he can't do anything, even though there's not even a gun. But I think that provoked a lot of people, that premise.
Yeah. So you would fully expect some people after watching this to be like, well, I'm gonna have the same kind of worries. Like, I love the conversation in the film that Bjorn has, where he's talking about like the fear of just being normal and just living every day. Like, I take my kid to school, I have a little bit of interaction for myself, but for the most part, I don't feel like I'm really living a life for myself. And so that's something like any parent thinks about. But then all of what you explore through the interaction between these two families, it causes you to think more about, like, well, how would I really react in the company of a stranger, and how willing am I going to be with stepping out of my comfort zone?
That's right. I mean, that's one part of it. And you're right. It's, I had this theme for 3 films now, a take on Scandinavian masculinity, or, the lack of masculinity. It's like, the modern masculinity where you're a bit, also a pathetic guy that doesn't, I'm not in touch with your more aggressive sides. It's something that I recognize from many of my surroundings here. But when that is said, it's also a film about, personally for me, a couple, and especially a guy who needs this experience, who lives those safe lives, who are not in contact with, their dark sides, their primitive nature, who doesn't even feel anything anymore. They just walk around in a perfect apartment, eating perfect food, is ashamed of flying too much, all this political correctness in their lives. When you do that, you are also standing there looking out in the darkness, longing for some horrible things to happen, some chaotic things to happen. And I think Björn is a man who falls for this, Patrick, because he's more like an animal. He's in touch with his primitive nature, and that is what he lacks in his life. So we talked a lot about that this couple, even though it's a horrible ending, for me it should also be a little bit poetic, because they have never been closer to their human nature. They're naked, they're crying, they're holding on each other. In the beginning, they're just drinking wine and something that looks like a film set in Italy. Is that true life? I mean, they had to go almost on a retreat to get in contact with what it is to be a real human being. And that is also to face your dark sides. And the film was very much about that as well. It's also about not saying no. But when I directed the actors, it's very hard to direct an actor saying you cannot say no. You have to direct him saying you want to be here, you don't want to leave. It turns you on being here. That was a key for us in making the movie, that they had to go through this experience to become real people.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about some of those deeper meanings of the film. Obviously, I want this to be a very unique so just so you know, I'm probably going to put a spoiler bumper at the top of this, just because thank you for having this very meaty, honest discussion with me. I really appreciate it, but I do want to try to protect the viewer's experience as much as possible, because that experience is very worthwhile, and so I really want as many people as they can to be able to have that experience. But so some of those deeper meanings that I was alluding to, like have not having a kid not having a tongue, the stoning. There's obviously maybe some biblical references here, or just some things that you've maybe cataloged throughout your life that may have been interesting to you that you want to pay homage to in some capacity. Can you talk about placing those things and maybe discussing them with your cast, and then having maybe some moments where you don't even know what it really means, but it's just really fascinating to you to dangle that out there so people like me can just be stewing on it for some time?
Yeah, in the beginning, we didn't think about all these references in an intellectual way.
Sure.
It's more about getting the puzzle together, and what is the tone and what universe are you operating in? And what really worked for us is to think about mythology, to think about the film as an opera or Greek drama, because without that elevated feeling, it would have been a couples comedy. It would have been about somebody visiting somebody and misunderstandings, but underneath, it had to be about being a human being in a civilized world. It has to be elevated. And we could just immediately sense that it worked if the kid's name was Apple, that they were stoned in the end instead of
Yeah.
stabbed with a knife, that the music was almost too big, because we are dealing with the horror genre. And when you deal with that, it's almost a fable. It's an adventure. It's not one-to-one realism. And you have to deal with a subject like evilness, with the good and evil, with Satan and God, and all these big issues that you have to do in a horror. And that was so liberating for me, because we allowed ourselves to think big. So that's why there is a stoning. I guess you can make like a intellectual way. You can say there's a punishment. It's because they have not spoken up. It's a punishment of not doing anything. But it was also about, it fit the universe. It seemed larger than life. It seems devilish to do that, and it seemed a very brutal way to die. That was almost physical, and we worked with these elements for a long time, and we could immediately feel. There was also, a period in the script where they had guns and they were shot. It seemed like a crime story. And then you would start to ask questions like, where are the police? How many years have they did it? Are they criminals? And these naturalistic questions, I was not at all interested in that. I was interested in the allegory in the myth, in how do normal modern people react to evilness in the world? Are they permitting it themselves? Maybe they are. So that was the genre that did that for us. And when we finally had all these pieces, and thinking about it was a keyword for me, thinking about it as an opera, then we thought it was a bigger story, even though many of the situations are very naturalistic. So yeah, it's finding your film, and it takes a while, but that's worth seeking for that for a long time.
Yeah. Well, man, I cannot tell you how thankful I am that you just said all of what you said. It's so fascinating. I was like leaning in the whole time, and it just started raining outside. So that's like some other.
Where are you in the world?
I'm in Texas.
You're in Texas. All right. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Would love to go there. Yeah, I'm in Copenhagen, and we had such a hot summer, and today it started to shift into autumn. So it's cool.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you, and please continue to push buttons. I hope you continue on that path.
Thank you so much.
No one's forcing you to stay, but I really hope you do, because today is gonna be a great day.